Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Issei. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei had ultimate gacha system? Part 10. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Both Seraphil from the Prime and Gacha DxD shared Sona photos with different magical girl outfit. However, Seraphil too was jealous of Seraphil as she had fewer pictures of Sona in magical girl outfit. The reason for this is because of Issei. Unlike the Prime world, Issei used his room to cause Sona to transform her outfit into a different magical girl outfit whenever she changed her clothes. No fair. Seraphil too said. She was skulking as she didn't have an Issei that could make Sona wear a different magical girl outfit. How come the Issei in this world is very different? Hee. Do you know what is more amazing? Seraphil asked Seraphil too. She smirked with triumph. Thanks to Issei, the Sona in our world loves to wear magical girl outfit. I don't even need to ask her. She would willingly wear them now. Seraphil then showed Seraphil two pictures of Sona smiling as she put on her magical girl outfit. Seraphil too was so jealous. Sona heard this and she blushed. Her. Wearing magical girl clothes of her own volition. Impossible. However, the pictures that Seraphil showed say otherwise. Then, there was a picture that made her embarrassed even further. Nah. Look. This was when Sona kissed Issei when she woke, Seraphil said. Sona gasped at the picture. It really was her counterpart kissing Issei. Hee. This happened before Issei even became a fiancé candidate. The FFT. That picture is something that will never happen in this world. Seraphil too said. She then hit her chest with her fist. If there is any man that wishes to be with my Sona-chan, they have to go through my groom training. They must beat me in a fight. No. They need to beat Surzich's-chan in a fight. Oh. That sounds like a great idea. Seraphil said. She then looked at Issei. Seraphil smiled and then she spoke. Issei. I want you to go through the groom training. Since you had already defeated me 2 years ago, this time, I want you to beat Surzich's-chan. You know that I'm part of the peace treaty, right? Issei said. Attacking Surzich's would mean breaching the treaty, but would they even dare to fight him if their strongest was beaten easily? How about this? When we return to our world, I can propose a friendly match between Surzich's and me. How's that sound? Perfect. Seraphil said. Everyone was looking at Seraphil and Issei as if they were insane. But you know, it wouldn't be as easy as when you pressured him in the peace treaty. This time, he would be ready and anticipating your strength. Oh? What is this? Are you afraid I'd lose? Issei said. Seraphil pouted at his teasing. She knew just how powerful Issei was without removing the loop of binding. Take the loop of binding away, and the strength Issei exhibits far exceeds anything she's seen before. Among everyone I know, you, Seraphil, are one of the 3 that knows how strong I really am. I know. Seraphil said she was poking her index finger together. Seraphil knows Issei's full power because she was there when he released it. Until this day, she couldn't fathom the boundless power of Issei. It's just, no matter how powerful you get, I will still worry from time to time. Issei pulled Seraphil close to him. I know, and all I can do is alleviate your worry with my words and actions, Issei said. He knew that no matter how strong he became, people that cared for him would always worry when he faced powerful people. Issei kissed Seraphil to calm her down in front of everyone. Stop worrying too much. That's not like you. I like the Seraphil that's childish and carefree with a smile on her face every second I look at her. Not far from Issei were Kaneko and the people of the orc. Kaneko pulled Issei's shirt and spoke. Issei-senpai, that's the kind of man that could be the harem king, Kaneko said. She was pointing at Issei. Look, he isn't even having perverted thoughts even when Leviathan Sama's breasts are on him. That Issei also seems to be more confident in himself when dealing with women, Ria said. She looked at Issei and saw that he was vastly different from Issei too. How did he get so powerful? He even used a power that could stop time, similar to the Aigers. Yet, it seemed different to an extent. Issei too was getting jealous that Issei was getting attention from the girls. However, there was nothing he could do. Issei too tried to use the boosted gear earlier when Issei attacked him, but it was useless, no matter how much he boosted. Amongst the people gathered in the room, the most interested in Issei, Rainer and Seraphil were Azazel and Vali. Azazel was interested because they were from a different world. However, Vali was interested in Issei because he wanted to fight a strong opponent, and that was Issei. Interesting. I want to know how strong you really are, Vali said. He took out his divine dividing and started to power up. Vanishing Dragon. Balance Breaker. Issei looked at Vali and he didn't even acknowledge him. This infuriated Vali and he attacked Issei, but it failed. Rainer intercepted him. HMPH. With your measly strength, you wish to contend with Issei, dream on. Rainer said. The fucker in front of her wanted to attack her husband for no reason. Let's see what the so-called White Dragon Emperor is capable of. Back in our world, I didn't get a chance to fight you since Issei beat you into a pulp, but this time, it's my turn. Rainer smirked at Volley, and she took out her wings. Issei saw Rainer's wings and raised an eyebrow. However, it wasn't just him. Everyone in the room was staring at the sight of Rainer's wings. Why? Because one of them was white as a pure angel, and one was as dark as the abyss. Oh ho, that's not something you see every day, as Issei said. A black and white wing on a single individual who was a former angel turned fallen. Becoming a dragon wouldn't change the color of one's wings. These people are getting more and more interesting by the second. The fight between Rainer and Volley was going the same way as Volley and Issei. No matter how many times Volley tried to divide Rainer's magic, nothing happened. Volley's divine dividing wasn't absorbing anything. Albion. What is happening? Volley asked. He looked in Rainer's direction and tried to use divide once more. Why is it not working? I don't know. The ability doesn't have any issues. The problem seems to be the girl, Albion said. He tried thinking of a solution, but nothing came up. I think your only chance of winning is confronting her without using divide. It's ineffective. Volley took Albion's advice, which wasn't bad, but the problem was that Volley tried to fight in close combat. Rainer was a specialist in close combat thanks to Issei teaching her Taekwondo. The moment Volley appeared in front of Rainer, she disappeared and he was hit on the head, sending him to the ground. What happened was that when Volley came in front of Rainer, she used both up to get above him and used both of her elbows to bash Volley in the head. This was Fang. Volley. Wake up. Albion shouted. The power of Rainer's Fang was powerful as it was laced with dragon force and super strength of the white tiger. This chick is no joke. Volley. You better wake up. She's initiating another attack. No matter how much Albion shouted, Volley was not waking up due to the amount of power he was hit with. Even if that was the case, Rainer was not letting him go easily. Volley dared to attack Issei out of the blue. While descending, Rainer sped up her descent. She then fixed her form to be parallel to the knocked out Volley. Why parallel to him? Because Rainer wanted to use Goryo, a technique that utilizes two horizontal kicks performed in quick succession at the head or neck of the opponent using the base of the feet. Rainer needed to be parallel to Volley to make the kick horizontal. When the kick connected, Volley vomited blood and he was sent deeper into the ground. Rainer was showing no mercy. Everyone watching the fight was shocked to see Rainer beat the White Dragon Emperor easily. Ria's and Sona's peerage know just how powerful Volley was with how he defeated Kakabiel. After defeating Volley, Rainer went towards Issei. She was smiling. You know, you didn't have to do that, Issei said. He looked at Rainer, who was smiling at him. Even if he made a surprise attack, Volley wouldn't have been able to harm me. You of all people should know that. We have the same body. I know, but it doesn't mean that I would just allow him to attack you, Rainer said. Even if the armor of Fafnir would protect Issei from the attack, she didn't feel right allowing someone to attack him. I didn't like that he wanted to harm you for no reason. He attacked out of nowhere while we were having a good conversation with this world's Zerafel. While Issei was conversing with Rainer, Volley stood back up. He was angry that he couldn't do anything. Volley's emotion went haywire, causing him to go berserk and access Juggernaut Drive. Vanishing Dragon. Juggernaut Drive. The room that everyone was in got destroyed as Volley's scale mail increased in size. Not good. Drake said from within Issei's boosted gear. We need to find a way to stop his Juggernaut Drive or else this town will be destroyed. What are you being so loud for? Issei said. He looked at the boosted gear in Issei's hand. You see, this is why I got rid of my boosted gear. Although the emotion of the previous wielder doesn't affect me, it does destabilize the boosted gear. Hence, becoming unreliable in certain situations. Issei looked at Volley in his Juggernaut Drive. He pointed his finger and said 3 words. Heavenly Accumulating Strike. Issei said. The golden beam was released from Issei's finger and blasted Volley. However, the moment it hit Volley was not the end of the path. The beam continued traveling further and further. It was so powerful that it reached space. Oh, the supernatural of this world would have to work hard to wipe the memory of the people that saw the beam. Knowing this, Issei smirked. Everyone was looking at Issei. The power of Heavenly Accumulating Strike was no joke. It was able to exit the atmosphere of the Earth and enter space. However, that's all everyone saw, but to Issei, he saw how insane the power was as it hit the moon and nearly made it move off course. Thankfully, Issei held back enough that it only dented the moon okay. It had a new large crater that people would question when they saw it. Holy crap. Issei too said. The power of the person beating him was more insane than he thought. Oh shit. Does that mean if I don't do as he says, I'll end up like Volley? Issei too was looking at Volley on the ground missing half his body. The sight of Volley made him shiver. Issei too now knows how much Issei was holding back against him. Issei then approached Volley and started healing him, but not with divine healing. He didn't deserve it. Although Issei wasn't using divine healing, the magic he was using was strong enough to regenerate Volley's missing body, but the pain that Volley was feeling wasn't going away anytime soon. "Greg, do you think you'd be able to tank that hit?" Issei too asked. He looked at the glowing orb of the boosted gear. "Oi. Did you hear me? I asked, can you tank that hit?" "Tank, why don't you go and tank it? Do you have a death wish?" Drake shouted. He saw it clearly. The attack was meant to let Volley survive by making it veer off course at the last minute. Volley is only barely alive because that man has no intention of killing him. I saw the attack change course at the last second. Even in my prime, I doubt I would come out unscathed if I was hit by it. It's that powerful. And to think he made such an attack look casual for him, Issei too said to Drake. "What do you think, Drake? Do you think it is a simple ability for him, or is it something that can only be done once?" "No, from the way he made it look to the way he acted casually, the attack he showcased doesn't seem to be hard for him to repeat," Drake said. "Dangerous. The Issei from another world is not someone to be trifled with. Issei, you are unlucky to have gotten the ire of such a man. I don't know why, but your perverted nature irks him." "Drake, what am I going to do?" Issei too asked. He was afraid of getting his ass kicked again. Although each hit he reached was healed instantaneously every time, the pain was still lingering until now. "He seems to not like me at all. But I haven't done anything to him." If you want to know why he seems to hate you a lot, why don't you just ask him?" Drake said. That was the best idea he could come up with. "I mean, he doesn't look that unreasonable after beating the shit out of you. I think his initial hatred for you has gone down." "Are you crazy?" Issei too shouted. He was staring at his boosted gear. "What if I asked and he beat me up again? Am I going to have to go through the same treatment as before?" "You have no choice," Drake said. There was no other option of finding out. Drake looked at Rainer and Serafal, but he wasn't sure if they knew the reason for Issei's hatred. "That's your only option of finding out. Unless you have some sort of mind-reading ability." "I don't have such a thing," Issei too said. He looked at Issei and sighed. "I guess I have no choice." Issei too took a deep relaxing breath before he approached Issei. The closer he got to Issei, the more nervous Issei too got. "Uno? I have a question that I was hoping you could answer," Issei too said to Issei. The moment he met with Issei too felt his existence was no more significant than an ant. He gulped, but he was already facing Issei. There was no turning back. "I want to know why you seem to hate me when you've only met me today. Aren't we the same person?" "The same person? HMPH. I'm nothing like you," Issei said. He looked at Issei too, and irritation seemed to be seen in his eyes. "Let me ask you this. When you do your degenerate acts, do you ever think about your parents?" "What do you mean?" Issei too asked. He had a confused look. "Why would I think of my parents when I do something like that?" "Looking at you really irks me," Issei said. He looked at Issei too with scorn. "Don't you ever think of how hard and traumatizing it was for them to have a child? Twice they had a miscarriage. And on their third time, they finally succeeded, but the child they got would go around doing horrible acts such as peeking and sexually harassing women. How do you think they feel when your school tells them that their only son is a sexual deviant? Do you ever think of that? Another reason is your uselessness and inability to work hard yourself. When you failed to protect Rias during the raiding game, did you ever think of trying to push yourself to become stronger? No, you relied on Drake to give you power. I didn't mind that, as it was an emergency, but did you ever try to better yourself after that event? Did you ever try to train so hard that you nearly collapsed so that what happened with Rias would never happen again? The answer is no. You won't do anything for yourself but peek at girls. You wouldn't do anything to work hard unless you are told and forced to do so. You have no drive to better yourself. Before the event of your failure to help Rias in her raiding game, you were too weak to save Asia, but after that event, you never did anything to train until it was 10 days before Ria's raiding game with Riser. Do you have to be told by someone else to do something before you decide to better yourself? Why can you do it on your own? Do you understand now why you irk me so much? What can I do? I'm not as strong as you. I wasn't born with your kind of power. Issei too shouted. He looked at Issei and scowled. I don't have a cool ability to control time like you. I don't have immense strength like you do. I have to rely on the boosted gear to get stronger. Issei then punched Issei too in the face. Stop with your damn self-pity. Issei shouted. He was now angry. Did you think I was born strong? Of course not, you fucker. I had to work myself to the bone to reach where I am today. Unlike you, it only took me a moment to realize how weak and pathetic I was back then. In my world, when I failed to protect Shuri and Akeno when they were being attacked, something inside of me snapped and made me realize that I needed to be stronger because this world will not tolerate the weak who are involved in the supernatural. One moment of realization was all it took for me to train harder and harder each day. So that I can gain the strength to protect the people that I care about. What about you? You have had the realization that you are weak and pathetic multiple times now. Yet, you have never trained to better yourself. All you do in your free time is watch porn and do deviant acts to women. After saying his piece, Issei left with Rainer and Serafal. Issei too and the others that heard what Issei said contemplated the things they've done so far. None of them has tried to better themselves. They've all waited for something to happen before they try to improve rather than improve themselves so that nothing bad can happen. Issei, Rainer and Serafal were still in Draconic Deus Prime the following morning. They can't go back home until a month later. So, to waste time, Issei thought about messing with Kuo Academy. He thought about going to Kuo Academy and pretending to be Issei's cousin or something. It was possible since Issei and Issei too aren't a 1-1 look-alike. Issei was taller, more muscular and had a different hairstyle. Plus, the mannerism of Issei was comparably distinct from Issei too, as he doesn't exude lecherous vibes. In Kuo Academy, Issei was standing at the gate and people were looking at him. They feel that they've met him but couldn't put their finger on it. Murayama and Cadis arrived at the gate of Kuo Academy. They saw Issei and were going to avoid him, but he seemed different. The two ladies wanted to leave the pervert alone, but they were curious why he looked different from his usual self. Hey Murayama. Don't you think that Issei looks different? As if he was a different person, Kata said. She wanted to approach Issei and ask him directly, but he was too much of a pervert. I know what you mean, but what I'm curious about is that he seems taller than usual. Is it some sort of late growth spurt or something? Murayama said. The Issei that she was looking at wasn't Issei too. Thus, she thought that he was taller than usual. The closer Murayama and Cadis got to Issei, the more they thought that he was a different person. Why? Because Issei seemed to have gotten taller and taller the closer they got. That's right, because Issei is 6 foot 1 inches tall, while Issei too was shorter at only 5 foot 7 inches. Issei looked at this world's Cadis and Murayama. They looked weaker than the ones in his world. He thought it was probably due to Issei too not having trained them in kendo. After all, in DxD Gacha, Issei has taught Murayama and Cadis whenever he had the time. Murayama and Cadis were walking closer and closer to Issei. The moment they were a few feet away, they realized that it might not have been Issei as the person looked different. From the similarities, a relative, perhaps. When Murayama and Cadis arrived in front of Issei, the duo had the same thought. Oh, my god. He's tall. Definitely not Issei. Murayama and Cadis thought. They looked at Issei and wanted to ask who he was, but they were mesmerized by his looks. To them, Issei looked like a Prince Charming. Ahem. You both have been staring at me for a while now, Issei pointed out. It's been a few minutes since Cadis and Murayama arrived in front of him. Issei thought they would ask him a question, but all they did was start at him. Is there something I can do for you girls? Sorry for staring. It's just you look similar to one of the perverted trio, Murayama said. She then looked at Issei intently. Although, that's only true from afar. Up close, I can definitely tell that you're not him. Your height, muscular frame, mannerism and looks are vastly more alluring than that pervert. Issei was laughing on the inside. Technically, he is the very same person, just without the perverted nature, at least not to the extent of being a sexual deviant. Sure, there are times he does have perverted thoughts, and he does get aroused by the people he loves, but he would never do something as fucked up as peeking at women undressed without their knowledge. What's the point? Isn't it better to watch your girlfriend wife striptease for you? At least that was Issei's opinion. Oh. I forgot to myself, Murayama said. She looked at Issei and spoke. I am Murayama, the captain of the kendo club here at Kuo Academy. And this lovely girl beside me is Cadis, my vice captain. Cadis waved her hand at Issei, and he returned the wave with a smile. Murayama and Cadis had their heart throb rapidly. And I ask what you're doing here? You don't seem to be a new student or a current student since you're not wearing our uniform, Cadis said. Although the person she talked to isn't one of the perverted trio, she was still wary of strangers being in the school. I'm here to meet my cousin, Hyoudou Issei said. He was here to monitor Issei and to make sure that fucker was not doing anything stupid. When he read the manga, he saw that the idiot would get stronger with the prospect of breasts. According to the manga, Issei too was threatened by Volley with the death of his parents, but he didn't have much of a strong reaction until Volley told him of the ability of half dimension. The prospect of making Ria's and the others' breasts smaller is what got him worked up, not the safety of his parents. I was asked to monitor him to make sure that he isn't doing anything degrading towards women. Oh, if that's the case, I can take you to him. That pervert would probably be with his stupid friends peeking somewhere, Murayama said. Whenever the kendo club is done with their morning training, the perverted trio would be peeking at the girls changing. This has been the routine since their first year. Murayama and Cadis then brought Issei to the location of Issei too, at least the expected place he would be. Sure enough, he was there. Even after Issei told him the other day, he has already forgotten the fear of being beaten up. So, Issei grabbed the head of Issei 2. Who the hell is? Issei 2 was going to shout and scold the person that disturbed his peeking session, but when he saw Issei, he was horrified. This isn't what it looks like. Oh, it looks exactly what it looks like. It seems that a single beating wasn't enough for you. Issei said. He then started dragging Issei 2 away, but not before saying his goodbye to Caddis and Murayama and leaving the rest of the perverted trio to them. I'll see you girls later, I'll deal with this little shit and I'll leave the other two to you girls. Murayama and Caddis nodded at Issei and they took out their shinai and started bashing Mitsuda and Motohama. The duo ran for their lives. As for Issei 2, he was getting another beating from Issei. This time, the beating was a lot rougher than the previous day. I'll be keeping an eye on you. Whenever you do anything derogatory towards women, I'll make you feel pain, Issei said. He then took out a bottle of potion. The next time I catch you, I'll use this pain enhancer on you. And the more I catch you doing said act, I'll increase the potency of the potion I use on you. I use this potion to torture someone once, but if it's not enough, I'll cut off your manhood instead. Don't test my patience. Issei started to walk away from Issei 2, but he was stopped by Issei's shout. Wait. Issei 2 shouted. He was struggling to stand up due to the pain he was feeling. You said that I was weak. Then, teach me to be stronger. I know that I'm weaker than the White Dragon Emperor, Vali. And with the way I am now, I'll be nothing more than a hindrance. If that's the case, then teach me to be stronger. If he wants to get stronger, why don't you bring him to the Danmachi world? That way, you can complete the challenge card while training your counterpart. But I still have a month to stay here. Issei said. He can't leave until the restriction of the dimension travel is reset. Remember, every time I enter a new world with dimension travel, I need to wait a month before I can return to my world. That's true, but you're not using the dimension travel, you're going to be using the challenge card to head to Danmachi. Good. This is going to be fun. Issei thought. He then grabbed Issei 2 and brought him to the hotel where he, Rainer and Serafel were staying. If I was to throw Issei 2 into the dungeon, would he be able to survive, or will he die? With the boosted gear, he should be able to survive. The real question you should be asking is what floor can he achieve on his own when you leave him inside. You can enchant his body so that he can't leave the dungeon and force him to fight his way down the dungeon. Oh. That's a great idea. I can give him something as a reward as an incentive, Issei said. It was getting more interesting thanks to the system. He didn't even think about enchanting magic on Issei 2 to prevent him from leaving the dungeon. You said I can activate the challenge card and it would transport me to the world of Danmachi, right? Would that even allow me to bring others? It would allow you to bring companions. However, only the person that activates the card can access the challenge. Essentially, the challenge is meant to be a long-term commitment, hence there is no restriction on bringing companions. Issei laughed and he opened a portal to the hotel room. Once he was inside, he saw that Serafel and Rainer were watching a show. However, his presence made them ignore it and focus on him. You're back already? Rainer said. She was sure that Issei wanted to mess with the people of Kuo Academy. But seeing that he was back would only mean that he has other plans now. What are you planning? And why do you have him? Rainer pointed at Issei 2, who was being dragged by Issei by the feet. Rainer feels sorry for Issei 2, but not to the point that she would care too much. I plan to head to another world, Issei said. Serafel was excited the moment she heard his words. As much as this world was fascinating, it was no different from their world. Normally, we would have to wait for a month before we could return, but with something I got, it would send us to another world. I plan to bring Issei 2 with us since he asked me to train him. Rainer gasped cold air through her teeth. Training with Issei was brutal. She remembers how hard it was for her. Looking at Issei 2, she prayed to the dead god to give Issei 2 mercy, for he was about to experience actual hell. I feel so sorry for you, Rainer said. She looked at Issei with a look of pity. What your ex-girlfriend did to you would be nothing more than a love tap compared to Issei's training. Good luck and I hope you don't end up dying. Rainer knew the ability of the training room legendary and its ability to reject death as it has no concept of death. However, the trauma of dying isn't light. Rainer experienced it when she was trained by Issei and she hoped never to experience it again. Issei too looked at Rainer. Dying from her counterpart's light spear is a love tap. Is she deranged to the point that gutting someone is merely a love tap? Issei too thought that the Rainer from another world was different, but it seems that it was only on the surface and deep down, she was still the same bitch that killed him and Asia. Poor Issei 2. He thought that Rainer was deranged due to her words. Issei 2 would know that Rainer was not the psychotic one but his counterpart. At least when it came to training. By the way, Issei. What is the world like that we're heading to? Is it similar to our world or is it another ancient setting world? Rainer asked. She was hoping that it wasn't another one of the cultivation worlds, as she didn't want to deal with young master or weird cultivators that likes to court death. I don't think I have the patience at the moment to deal with idiots like that moron when we were exploring the ancient Orchid Ruin City. I'm not sure about the world since it's not a place I've been to before, Issei said. He then spoke to the system mentally. System, can you give me details of the world of Danmachi? Other than it has a dungeon, I know nothing else. The world of Danmachi can be considered to have a medieval setting. It's similar to some of the RPG games that you've played. You fight monsters and level up. However, the difference is gods and goddesses walk amongst the mortals. They bestow a blessing to adventurers to gain the ability to level up. The system continued to explain the situation of Danmachi. It described the familiar system, the guild, Babylon, and others. Issei then repeated everything he heard from the system to Rainer, Serafal and Issei 2. In the city of Arario, a bright flash on the outskirt of the gate appeared. The people that came from this bright flash were Issei and his group. Looking at the place, Issei saw many people entering the city. Now, this is a problem. If Issei and the others had appeared inside, it would have been easier. Hey Issei? Rainer called. She saw that people were paying to get in. They didn't have money to enter the city. What are we going to do? Isn't the dungeon inside the city? We don't have the money from this world. How will we enter? I have many illegal ways to enter, but we're going to need more money anyways, Issei said. Issei only needed to conjure some jewels to exchange if that was the case. I can speak with the guards and ask them if we can exchange some jewels for shoot. What was the currency again? Right. Valis. I can ask them to help us change jewels for Valis to enter the city. You have jewels with you? Issei 2 asked. That was a weird thing to have in his person. What is the purpose of having jewels with you all the time? Well, apparently, I can use it to exchange for money, Issei said. He was looking at the line. It was pretty long. Issei estimates that it would take at least 30 minutes to be their turn. This is going to suck. As estimated by Issei, it took the group 30 minutes for their turn to arrive. Issei spoke to the guard and exchanged a simple jewel with the guard, and he received a few thousand Valis. Issei was told by the guard that they didn't have the funds to buy the jewel from him, but Issei told them to give him as much as they could. So Issei was given a few thousand Valis. Once Issei paid for his group's entrance fee, they entered Arario and were excited to explore the city. Issei, Rainer, Serafal and Issei 2 separated into two groups. The girls headed who knows where, but the Issei and Issei 2 headed to the guild. Thanks to the system, Issei knew that he would have to register with the guild to be able to enter the dungeon. So as not to waste time, the two Issei headed to the guild. Issei was dragging Issei 2 by his leg the entire way to the guild. Once Issei and his counterpart arrived at the guild, they had to queue in line once more as many people registered with the guild. Looking around, Issei whistled. There were many different species that he could see. This was the first time that Issei had seen such a sight. Most species like devils, angels, fallen angels, and yokai have their own territory back on Earth. For the other supernatural species to visit other territories, they need to get permission. Hence, there was not a lot of sight with them intermingling. However, that may no longer be true due to the peace treaty. While Issei was thinking about the different species of Earth, he heard a cough. The one that coughed to gain his attention was a red-haired wolf girl. Issei looked her up and down and nodded in appreciation of her beauty. However, on the other hand, Issei 2 had a lecherous face that caused the receptionist to recoil. So, Issei decided to bash Issei 2 in the head to knock him out. I apologize for his idiocy, Issei said. It was not his place to apologize for Issei's behavior, but he had to in case the receptionist got creeped out and asked him to look for another person to help. I'd like to register as an adventurer. Follow me, the red-haired wolf girl said. Looking at the receptionist, Issei thought that she was pretty cold. However, he knew the reason. In a place such as a dungeon, it isn't rare for people to die. So, the girl is probably acting the way she is so that she wouldn't have any feelings for the people she advises. I'll be your guild advisor. I'm Rose Fanad. I'm Hyoudou Issei, Issei introduced himself. He then pointed at Issei 2. This man is called Ice. That's weird, both your names are close to each other, Rose said. She looked at Issei 2 and spoke. If anything, Ice sounds like a nickname rather than a name. Issei just smiled rather than saying anything. Why? Because it is true. Ice is nothing more than a nickname. However, it would be weird to introduce each other with the same name. Rose gave Issei a parchment to register his identity and affiliation. Issei asked if he needed to be associated with a familia to be able to enter the dungeon. It's not necessary. However, you would not be able to receive some of the benefits of being in a familia, Rose said. Those that do not join a familia would have a more challenging time in the dungeon. Why? Because they can't level up. I suggest you look for a familia. Being in one is far more beneficial than not being in one. If I was any other person, I would have gladly taken your suggestion to heart, Issei said. He looked Rose in the eyes. Although they are cold and unfeeling, that was only on the surface. Deep down, Issei can tell that Rose is giving it her all to help the new adventurers assigned to her. To provide them with the best chance of survival. However, I see no benefit of being a child of a god or goddess. Their fauna is useless for me. Rose sighed as she thought that Issei was one of those adventurers that overestimated themselves, as they had never experienced a dungeon before. However, she still wanted to help him as much as possible without having any deep connection with him. Since I can't persuade you to look for a familia, the least I can do is offer you a lesson about the dungeon and the monsters on each floor, Rose said. As Issei thought, Rose isn't as unfeeling as she hoped to be. Now, follow me to another room so that I can start the lesson about the dungeon. 2 hours. That's how long the lesson lasted. During the entire time, Issei too was knocked out. Rose looked at Issei too to see when he would wake up, but he never did. Why? Because when he was about to gain consciousness, Issei would hit him so fast that even Rose, who had her eyes on him, couldn't see his movement of knocking out Issei too. Thanks to Rose, Issei had a nasty thought about a punishment for Issei too. When the system gave Issei information about Danmachi, it didn't include the dungeon's contents. But thanks to Rose, he was about to learn what each floor contained and the monster's strength. At least until the 59th floor. Issei and Issei too made their way into the dungeon. The first floor was simple and easy, with nothing to worry about even for Issei too. However, the fun starts now. Issei found a location with enough open area to enact his plan on the first floor. What are we doing here? Aren't we going to continue descending? Issei too asked. Though he was asleep the whole time during Rose's explanation, he was knowledgeable about dungeon setting games. The monsters on this floor are no sweat for Drake and me. While Issei too thought the dungeon was easy, Issei brought his hand in front of him and used his runes to block Drake and Issei's connection, making the boosted gear ineffective as Issei too was unable to access it. However, that was not all. Issei then used Heavenly Accumulating Strike on the ground. The power that Issei used was enough to make a hole to the 25th floor. Thanks to Rose, Issei knew that this floor was full of water. To follow the theme of water, Issei used his rune to make the clothes of Issei too into a bikini. No matter how many times Issei too tries to change his clothes, they would always transform into a two-piece bikini that has his entire body exposed. You son of a bitch. Issei too shouted. He was covering his entire body with his hands trying to hide his body, but to no avail. What are you going to do? Why did you make a hole? This is Sparta. Issei shouted. He then kicked Issei too in the chest towards the hole that he made. Issei too screamed for his life. Issei then took out a sword and attached a note to it before tossing it into the hole he made. I've always wanted to say those words. Issei laughed as he made his way outside the dungeon. The system told Issei the challenge had yet to begin as it wasn't fully activated. To activate the challenge, Issei had to crash the card within the dungeon when he was ready to begin. Since the challenge was yet to begin, he decided to look for the girls and spend some time with them sightseeing around Arario. Meanwhile, on the 25th floor of the dungeon, Issei too emerged from the water and swam to the nearby platform. As Issei too relaxed and lay down on the platform, a sword fell between his legs. This scared Issei too to death. He thought that his manhood was going to be cut off. Looking at the sword, Issei saw the note attached to it. When he read it, he screamed. The content of the note says as follows. Ascend the dungeon as much as you can. Try and reach the 100th floor. If I catch up to you, I'll punish you more than you've already been punished. I'm giving you 2 days head start. Take the sword attached to this note as your weapon because you won't be able to wield the boosted gear until 2 days from now. Good luck staying alive. The place I sent you is the 25th floor of the dungeon. Be careful of the lurking danger. I hope you survive. Happy hunting. Damn it. Why is that guy doing this to me? Issei too shouted. He then remembered that he was the one that asked Issei to help him train. Is this a sick joke? Can something like this even be considered training? I don't even know how to use a sword and you gave me one as a weapon. You could have taught me how to use it first before kicking me down the hole. Due to Issei's shouting, he attracted the monsters on the floor. Sirens, carbuncle, blue crab, aqua serpent, etc. They all headed to his location. Seeing that he would be surrounded by monsters, Issei too took the sword he was given and started running for his life. It has been 2 days since Issei too was shoved into the 25th floor of the dungeon. The entire time, he has made no progress. The funny thing about Issei too is he knew the monsters would kill him if he was to make a single mistake, but he hadn't learned his lesson. Whenever he saw a harpy, he would lure them to the point that he would stop moving and forget that he was inside a dungeon filled with monsters. Partner. What the hell are you doing? Dodge, now. Drake shouted. In the past 2 days, he was incapable of contacting Issei too, but he saw everything happening. To say that Drake was disappointed was an understatement. Even in this high-tension situation, you still do the stupidest things. Those are monsters that'll kill you without hesitation. Yet, you still only have one thing on your head, Oppai. Get your act together, or else you'll die. Drake. You're finally back. Issei shouted. If Drake could communicate with him, that would mean the boosted gear was ready for use. Boosted gear. Issei tried to access the boosted gear, but to no avail. Drake. What's going on? Issei too shouted. The boosted gear was not responding. Why can't I bring out the boosted gear? When your counterpart stopped our connection, he also did something else, Drake said. The connection was only one of the things that Issei did to the boosted gear. Issei too didn't know what was done, but Drake did. He gave me control of the boosted gear. He told me to allow the usage only when you behave. He knew that there were harpies on this floor. So, he said, if you have even a single ounce of lewd thoughts, I am to prevent you from using my abilities. Are you crazy? Why would you listen to him? Issei too shouted. However, Drake ignored him. Why would you side with him rather than me? Why? That's simple. I don't want to be the target of his anger. Drake shouted. He was given a mental message when he was cut off from Issei too. The message contained memories of what happened to the Drake from Issei's world. Hence, Drake wasn't willing to piss off some of that caliber. Thinking of the punishment done to Drake from another world, Drake shivered. I suggest you stop pissing him off even further. He is more of a monster than you can imagine. My counterpart from his world suffered immensely due to things he's done. You don't want what happened to that Drake to happen to you. Believe me, it was horrendous. While Issei too was conversing with Drake, a harpy lunged at him. Thankfully, Drake was able to warn him. However, another monster behind Issei too was able to sneak attack him. The monster that attacked Issei too was an aqua serpent. Luckily for him, the aqua serpent didn't bite him, but was bashed with its head. Issei too took the sword that he had been using for the past 2 days and slashed at the aqua serpent. It was useless. The sword that Issei gave Issei too was strong, but you have to use enough force for it to harm the aqua serpent. This is because the sword in Issei's hand is meant to be used as a training tool. Unfortunately, without the boost of the boosted gear, he was weaker than a goblin from the first floor of the dungeon. Issei. Run, now. Drake shouted. He was willing to help Issei too in a tight spot, but he knew that Issei was monitoring his activities. If he was to help Issei too now when he was just looting the harpy, Issei would know, and he would be punished when Issei caught up with them. You aren't strong enough to fight them head on. Your only chance is to kill them with a sneak attack. Find a place you can use to hide and lunge towards them when they're distracted. Issei too ran as fast as he could, but the harpy, aqua serpent and other monsters were faster than he was. He was hoping for Drake to activate the boosted gear. However, his hope was shattered when he heard Drake speak. HMPH. You're wrong if you think I'd activate the boosted gear because of this situation. Drake said. He was not willing to accept the punishment on behalf of Issei too. I suggest you use this chance to train properly. You have no proper hand-to-hand combat abilities. No magical skills other than your damn dress break. This is an excellent chance to train, don't waste it by thinking of useless things such as the Oppai of the Harpy. Outside the dungeon, Issei was finally going to start the challenge. Every adventurer inside the entrance of the dungeon is looking at Issei. The reason is because of his clothing. There was not a single article of protective clothing on Issei. This causes other adventurers to laugh at him and expect him to die inside the dungeon. System, what would happen when I activate the card? Issei asked. As much as he loved to take on the challenge, he didn't want others to be caught up in it. Others are not going to be in danger because of me, are they? No, as soon as you activate the card, the dungeon will produce as many monsters as possible on each floor. These monsters would actively search and attack you. However, this is only true as long as you're in the dungeon. As you leave the dungeon, the extra monsters not meant to be there will dissipate until you return. The previous floor will return to normal as you descend to the next floor. Even if you ascend to the previous floor, there would be no monsters actively searching for you. After hearing what the system had to say, he crashed the card in his hand without hesitation. The dungeon started to shake as new monsters were born to actively search for and kill Issei. With a simple sword in hand, Issei descended the dungeon. The moment Issei stepped foot on the first floor, he was met with a goblin's blade. This was no issue for Issei at all. Looking in front of him, there were more than 30 goblins. This made Issei smile as the dungeon was indeed after him. Slash, stab, slash, slash. Issei met the goblin without hesitation and killed them. Behind Issei was a field full of magic stones. Issei was too lazy to bother picking them up. So, he ignored it. However, the system sent him a message. Does the user wish to activate auto-looting? Hold on. You have auto-looting. Issei said. He could have used the ability of the auto-looting to help him with harvesting the farm long ago. Why didn't you tell me about this before? You had no use for the auto-looting. You believed that it could be used on your farm, but that's not the case. Auto-looting is only used when you're looting a person you've killed or, in this case, the monster you've killed. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. When you're harvesting your farm, you're not looting it. Hence, auto-looting won't work. How about the sacred family? Why didn't the auto-looting not activate? Issei asked. It would have been useful back then. It would have been a great thing to take all their money, items, etc. It wouldn't have worked. You didn't kill them. You only crippled them to the point that no miracle pill will be able to allow them to cultivate again. It was true. That would mean Issei had to kill to allow the auto-looting to be activated. Until now, the beings he fought had barely any items on them. Picking it up by hand was enough. Hence, auto-looting's never been activated, but that wasn't the case now, as he has killed more than 30 goblins, and each dropped a magic stone. Issei smiled. Good. He thought. There was no need for him to actively pick up the magic stone. With it, he would be able to gain the valis they need without selling any of his weapons or jewels. Activate the auto-looting and start looting, Issei said to the system. In an instant, Issei was already on the 5th floor of the dungeon. Along the way, he was met with monsters non-stop. Issei has gained over 1,000 magic stones from the 1st to the 4th floor. Unfortunately, he didn't get any dropped items. On the top of the dungeon, Bel Cranel, a new adventurer, was planning on dungeon diving today. However, he heard that there seemed to be a problem with the dungeon from the people. 2 hours ago, monsters were born at an alarming rate. It was confirmed that the dungeon floor from 1st to 20th was filled with monsters to the brim. Hearing this, Bel was forced to retreat back to his familia's territory, which was an abandoned church. Back on the 5th floor, Issei was fighting against countless monsters. There was no problem at all, but suddenly, a minotaur, a monster from the lower floors, appeared. Unfortunately for the minotaur, it only took Issei a single swipe of his blade to kill it. While Issei was killing the monster around him, he heard a group of adventurers fighting the monsters actively searching for him. For some reason, it attacked their group. System, I thought you said that the monsters would be actively attacking me? Issei asked. The monsters that were attacking the adventurer party were the monsters after him. Issei could tell as they have a different appearance to the regular monster usually made by the dungeon, as shown by Rose. Why is an adventurer party being hunted down? It seems like one of the party members did something to the monster. I don't know what they did, but they gained the monster's aggro. This should be ordinarily impossible. What the hell did they do to gain the monster's aggro if it is normally impossible for them to be attacked? Issei asked. He looked at the group of adventurers and sensed that they were strong. However, no matter how strong they were, being surrounded on all sides would not be easy to escape. After all, there were over 100 monsters on them. I should save them. I don't know what caused the monsters to be aggressive towards them, but it is my fault for increasing the number of monsters in the dungeon. The group of adventurers being surrounded consisted of a blonde human, a blonde palom, 2 Amazonas, a high elf, an elf, a burly dwarf, and a white-haired werewolf. Bet. What did you do? One of the Amazonas said. You were warned the monsters look different from normal. Finn asked you to not mess around. How would I know that they would all suddenly attack us? Bet shouted. All he did was mock the monsters for being weak and kicking them. It's not like these monsters would be able to understand what we're saying. Other than that, all I did was kick some of them. What do you not understand about them being different? It means that they were irregular to begin with. Yet, you decided to mess about. We're stuck since we're being surrounded. The other Amazonas shouted. Everything has been going wrong since they ascended. First, they allowed a minotaur to ascend. And now, due to Bet, they were surrounded by over 100 monsters. Next time, I would request Loki-sama not to put me in a raid with you. Although the monster on the 5th floor is weaker than the monsters they usually deal with, they are still struggling due to the amount and coordination of the monsters. That's right, the monsters after Issei were all irregular monsters with unusually high intelligence, allowing them to understand, communicate, and plan together. This is the difficulty of this challenge. While the group of adventurers were fighting with great teamwork, the monster could still overpower them. Tiona, one of the Amazonas, messed up and was nearly attacked by the monsters. However, before the monster was able to touch her, Tian saw a man slice it in one clean slash. Tiona looked at the man that saved her, and she was in awe. Not because he saved her and killed the monster in one hit, but what happened next. Issei killed the monster that was about to hit Tiona. He then proceeded to use Shun to appear in front of the monsters and disappear the moment the monster was killed. More than 50 monsters were remaining. Yet, in an instant, upon the arrival of Issei, all the monsters were dead. It wasn't only Tiona that was surprised at what they saw. Ace, Bet, Riveria, Lafia, Gareth, Finn, and Tyne were all surprised. They knew that the monsters weren't the normal weak monsters. But yet, here is a person that was able to eliminate more than 50 of them in an instant. Watching Issei, Bet clicked his tongue in annoyance. "Are you guys okay?" Issei asked. He saw Bet looking at him with a glare, but he ignored the werewolf. "I suggest you guys head out of the dungeon now. As long as you don't do anything to gain the monster's aggro, they shouldn't attack you. At least the special type monster." Finn was going to ask Issei if he knew something about the monster's sudden increase in number, as it sounded like he had some information about it. However, it was pointless as Issei disappeared in a flash. None of the adventurer party members was able to follow Issei's movement. "What kind does one have to be to reach such speeds?" Finn asked. Bet was their faster fighter. Yet, he was nowhere near the speed of what Issei showcased. Finn looked at Bet and asked. "Do you think you can catch up to his speed?" "What? Are you insane? I couldn't even see him move. How the hell am I going to catch up to him?" Bet said. He saw the way Issei moved. Bet might have been annoyed after being saved, but it doesn't mean he didn't acknowledge when someone was better than him. If anything, did you see how he used a crappy sword? Yet, when he killed each of the monsters, he did no more than a single slash. I doubt Ace could even do that with a crappy ass sword like that man used. The more they thought about their encounter with Issei, the more they felt that he was weird. However, on the other hand, Ace was interested in Issei. The way he fought was beyond her. Strength, speed, technique, not a single thing was she above Issei. Seeing that Ace showed interest in Issei, Bet once more clicked his tongue. However, thinking about Issei, no matter how he tries to see it in his mind, his own imagination is incapable of making him win against Issei. Why? Because his instincts are telling him not to mess with a person beyond anything in the world. At the end of the day, Issei reached the 13th floor. Unlike the previous floors, the floor that Issei was on has gotten more difficult. The lower he descends in the dungeon, the more dangerous the dungeon becomes. However, Issei hasn't shown everything he is capable of. The entire time, he hasn't even used any of his magic. "This is getting harder, but it's fun," Issei said. Getting challenged isn't something that often happens for Issei, but when it does happen, he would take advantage of it and have as much fun as he could. Issei looked at his sword, and it was in bad shape. "I guess even coating this sword in sword intent isn't enough to keep up with me. Then again, most swords wouldn't be able to withstand the techniques I use. But this sword is now falling apart. As long as I hold on to it, I could use my Knight of Honor to turn it into a noble phantasm of D rank." The moment Issei used Knight of Honor, the sword in his hand was covered in green energy and red-like veins. The rank of the weapon rose to a D rank noble phantasm. Although it wasn't a very high-quality weapon, it was good enough to reach at least the 50th floor. "Good enough," Issei said. He looked in front of him, and monsters were charging at him. Issei didn't have the patience to wait for them to reach him. So, he dashed towards them with shun. "Ha ha ha. Let's have some fun." With each slash of Issei, not 1, 2, or 3, but more than a dozen monsters would be decapitated. Each swing of Issei's sword is like a river flowing. The entire time, Issei had a smile on his face. Although he couldn't be called a battle maniac, Issei did like fighting when it doesn't involve getting the people he cares about hurt. After killing all the monsters on the floor, Issei decided not to descend to the next floor. Instead, he created a barrier around him and entered his soul subspace. This soul subspace was something he received when he absorbed a page of the Temporal Demon Spirit book. This subspace has a few benefits. 1. Issei can use it as a living space for the people he loves. 2. It can be used to train people. Those who train inside the subspace benefit from its ability to help its residents to comprehend their techniques. 3. The subspace has a ratio of 1:24. 1 day inside the subspace is equivalent to 1 hour in the real world. Lastly, Issei has complete control of the subspace. He can change what it looks like to accommodate all those that live within. Why would Issei enter the subspace when he's inside the dungeon? Issei wants to access his divine sword knowledge god to learn sun breathing. Why? Isn't Issei strong enough as is? True, but Issei has the hunger to continue getting stronger, no matter how strong he got. Learning a new sword style is just another way to get stronger. While Issei was in his subspace to train the sun breathing, Issei too, on the other hand, was struggling on the 25th floor. That's right, he hasn't made any progress at all. Then again, it was to be expected since Drake was not allowing him access to the boosted gear. Damn it. When are those monsters going to leave? Issei too complained. A few hours ago, the monsters in the dungeon suddenly increased. Thankfully, they weren't after him. This is insane. It's getting worse by the minute. I don't know how long I'll last in these conditions. You have no choice but to do your best, Drake said. He felt that the increase in monsters spawn was done by the other Issei. He didn't know why, but that was the feeling he was getting. As great as your hiding spot is, eventually, you'll get caught. What do you want me to do? There is nothing I can do to fight these monsters since you aren't allowing me to use the boosted gear. Issei too whispered to Drake. He looked at the glowing area on the back of his left hand. And this damn sword he gave me is useless. I couldn't even scratch that snake earlier. You're wrong, the sword in your hand is a powerful weapon, Drake said. He felt the power of the sword long ago. However, Issei didn't have the physique to bring out the true potential of the sword. With enough strength, that sword in your hand is capable of cutting just about anything he can physically cut. Right now, you're simply too weak to make use of the sword. Is it really that great? Issei too asked. He got confirmation from Drake that it was. Then how could I use this thing? As you said, I don't have the strength to bring out its true potential. The power of the boosted gear could bring out its true potential if you boost yourself enough, Drake said. He then sighed. If only you could stop being lecherous for a few minutes, I could allow you access to the boosted gear. Alas, your damn pervertedness is disgustingly more important to you than your life. I already told you that if you want to use the boosted gear, you need to stop having perverted thoughts. I tried. Issei too shouted. How can he not have lewd thoughts when the breasts of the harpies were there for all to see? He. The op-eye of the harpies go boing boing. Snap out of it. Drake shouted. He really thought that it would be better to let Issei too die and let him get a new host before he gets a weird nickname like the op-eye dragon. The more you continue to be this way, the faster you'll dig your grave. Rainer and Seraphil were shopping in the Tower of Babel outside the dungeon. Seeing the cool-looking adventurer clothing that some of the adventurers were wearing, the duo thought about looking at some of the armor in the famous Hephaestus store. While Seraphil was not that knowledgeable about weapons as she doesn't use any, she could tell that some of the weapons were high quality. However, the same cannot be said for Rainer. When she saw the weapons around, she felt disappointed. Not a single weapon even comes close to one of the legend ranker epic weapons that Issei is capable of producing. Ray? What's with that look? Seraphil asked. She saw the disappointed look on Rainer's face. Is there something wrong with these weapons? I think they seem great. No, none of the weapons here can rival Issei's weapons, Rainer said. She looked around and found a great sword that could be considered the best. However, it was leagues behind Issei's epic weapons. I don't get why this place is famous. Not a single weapon here is any good. If the weapons are no good, let's look at the armors, Seraphil said. She dragged Rainer to another section of the store. Look, this place is the armor section. Let's look around. This time, it was Seraphil's turn to be disappointed. Although she didn't know if Issei was the one that made the robe of the sage or not, the armor around the shop looked disappointing when compared to Issei's robe of the sage. Okay, this time, you're the one that looks disappointed, Rainer said. She saw Seraphil look disappointed with all the armor around the shop. Is there anything wrong with the armors? I can't really say. I've seen Issei's robe of the sage when we enter a magical girl convention. That robe was phenomenal, Seraphil said. She loved the robe of the sage that Issei wore that day. It didn't just make him look hot, but it emitted an aura of superiority. Compared to that robe, all these are like a piece of junk. The entire time that Rainer and Seraphil were bad-mouthing the equipment from the Hephaestus store, the store workers could no longer take it. They couldn't tolerate their products being insulted. Who are you two to say such words about the quality of our products? You're not even blacksmiths. You wouldn't know the blood, sweat and tears that were shed when these weapons were created. One of the Hephaestus Familia members shouted. Every item sold on the shop floor and showcased is equipment that has been acknowledged by Hephaestus-sama herself. How dare you say that they are of low quality? To be fair, Rainer and Seraphil never said that the quality of the equipment is low. They merely stated that it doesn't come close to anything Issei has or made. This is true. We said no such things. Seraphil said. She looked at the person that shouted at her and Rainer. You are spouting nonsense. We merely said that the quality of this store doesn't come close to the equipment that our husband has or made. Lies. I heard you call our products a piece of junk. The man said. He then pointed at everyone in the store. I have witnesses. They all heard what you said. Are you perhaps deaf? Rainer asked the man. The man recoiled at the sight of Rainer. We never said that the products here were junk. We said that compared to the robe of the sage that our husband owns, everything here is like a piece of junk. That doesn't mean we are implying that the things here are junk. Do you understand? Or do I need to spell everything out for you so that you'd understand what the words I'm saying mean? While Rainer and Seraphil were arguing with a man, a beautiful woman with short red hair arrived. She saw one of her Familia members arguing with a customer and wanted to know what was happening. Cedric, what's going on here? Hephaestus asked. He looked at the man for an explanation. Why exactly are you making a scene here? Hephaestus-sama. It isn't my fault. Cedric shouted. He then pointed at Seraphil and Rainer. These two women were slandering our blacksmith's hard work. They called our products a piece of junk. Hephaestus listened to her child, but she didn't believe him. Why? That's because she saw the whole thing. Hephaestus heard what Seraphil and Rainer said about the items in the store. They never called the equipment junk. They merely said that compared to something, it could be considered junk. "Why are you lying to me, Cedric?" Hephaestus asked. The man recoiled after he heard what Hephaestus said. "I saw the entire thing. They never outright said that our products are junk. They inferred that it could be considered junk compared to their husband's work. Tell me, Cedric. When did they call our items junk?" The man named Cedric was cowering in the presence of his goddess. All he wanted to do was humiliate the duo, saying horrible things about the products produced by their familia's blacksmith. In the end, he was scolded by his goddess. Hephaestus was looking at Seraphil and Rainer. The words that they said weren't lies. That would mean that there is a person out there capable of forging weapons and armor better than her familia. Excited. That's what Hephaestus was feeling. She didn't know why, but the prospect of meeting the husband of the duo made her excited. Huh? The husband of the duo? She stared at both women in shock. Someone was able to make two powerful women become their wives. Hephaestus got even more intrigued by the kind of man their husband was. End of the here. So that's it for today's video, guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.